as I'm sure a lot of you know, these classes are also recorded for the Beth podcast, and I'm trying to be as mindful as possible for people who do listen to the podcast and rely on it. So I'm going to be doing my best to summarize answers that you all give. So that's what the repetition is for, because we're working with a couple of forms of media here. All right. All right. So I've titled this this shiur "Step by Step," and why step by step. So we're moving from a world right now of the general in the story of Noah, to the world of the specific, the world of Avram, which is a move that we are constantly called to do at every moment, living in both Jewish and non-Jewish worlds, right? And we seem to be performing the shift at an exhausting rate at the moment, balancing the views of narratives outside the Jewish world and the views and narratives within the Jewish world. The word world is daunting too, because how can any individual make an impact on the world or a world? It may seem like the weight of what is going on lies on our shoulders, our individual shoulders. I think that's what a lot of us are feeling right now. We were just speaking, a couple of us were speaking earlier about just feeling helpless as to what it is that we can do in this moment. And I really imagine, as we're moving into Parashat Lech Lecha, that this is how Avram, before he became Abraham, felt. So let's look at this first verse here, Genesis 12:1. This is where Lech Lecha comes from. Vayomer Hashem el Avram, Lech Lecha me'artzecha u'mimoladecha u'mibeit avicha el haaretz asher areka. God said to Avram, "Go forth from your native land and from your father's house to a land that I will show you." Now, that's pretty big, right? Leave your native land, leave your father's house to a land that I will show you. That's a lot. It's a lot to ask of a person. I would like to hear just a couple reflections on what's at stake here for Avram. What does this shift mean, and is this even a reasonable thing to ask a person to do? Anybody has any ideas right off the top of their head? Yeah, Paul.
He's being asked to go from something he knows to something he has no idea of. Pretty scary.
Yeah, so he's been asking to go from something he doesn't know to something he has no idea of, which is very scary. Yeah. Irv?
I read this and I didn't think of it. I wish I had. But he went on a march with his family, and really, having done marches with the farmer kids in the rural areas, people gather, and that's where Judaism kind of the idea of one God.
So we're saying that he
created the Jewish people when he was led by Paul, when he said go out, it was to go out and let everybody know that there's one God, not every little idol that you can smash up.
Right. Yeah. So we're saying that Avram went out and
March.
he was an organizing march. He was an organizer, which is there's a lot of organizing going on right now.
So we got the governor to sign our bill. That's
yeah, he's going on a march with so many people in tow, and I think I'm going to come back over here. I saw some hands on this side of the room. Yes, please.
Well, he doesn't know where he's going.
Right.
So it would be one thing to say, go to this place. It sounds for you to go to this place, but this is what the real is. When am I going to know?
Yeah.
For you.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're saying here that that Avram's really being asked to take a leap of faith, right? He's got to just go. He's being asked to do all these things without any idea of where he's going, which is I don't know. I don't know about even myself or anybody in this room, but I think if somebody said, right now, leave rabbinical school, leave your parents, leave Pico Robertson, and go somewhere that you'll find out about a little bit later, I'd be like, oh, I don't know about that. I have a couple of questions for you. I think I had, right over here.
So it says, first make arts of
Mhm.
from your land.
Yeah.
Undefined what that means. Then it says you were allowed not only your land, but the place where you were born. And then it says, Beit Avicha. Here's a familiar relationship. So it's really being separated from everywhere. land he is in now, the place he was born, and then from his father's house.
Right.
So he's going out totally into unknown.
Right. So we're picking up on this threefold ask of leaving not only your land, but even more importantly, the place where you were born. Not only the place where you're born, but surely that's where everything you've ever known is, but your father's house. You know, it's one thing for an entire family to leave together. It's another thing to say, I'm going to leave my family behind. He takes a ton of people with him, but he leaves his father's house to go along this journey, whether we think it's along the Euphrates or whether we think it's by some other circuit. You know, it's really, I think scholars think it's sort of the up and down over through the Fertile Crescent. But yeah, it's huge, a huge step into the unknown here. Yeah.
I mean, what I'm hearing people say, I don't think I heard this word.
Uh-huh.
He's being told to be vulnerable.
Nice.
And like all those different centric circles of vulnerability that Mars was talking about are like, I'm not sure I'd be okay saying yes to one. All the more so, all of be vulnerable in all the ways. And I find that very compelling and courageous.
Absolutely. So it's a big ask for vulnerability, which takes a lot of courage, a leap of faith, as we heard mentioned. You know, it's not easy to be vulnerable. Really, I don't think it's ever really been easy to be vulnerable as a human being who has responsibilities and hopes and dreams and a vision for their future. You know, I think at this moment, I can't imagine that Avram ever saw this as part of his future, right? How could he have? You know, I'm sure he thought that, you know, I was born in Rokastim. I grew up here. You know, I know the streets, I know the alleys, I know the stores, I know the schools, if there were, you know, schools, I know the people. And it takes a lot of vulnerability to say, all right, I'm going to leave that behind. It's huge. So I want to take us forward to our next source on the page, which is from Bereshit Rabbah. As you can see, I gave you the information on the page, but I'm just going to read it out loud here. So it's composed around 500 CE and Talmudic Israel and Babylon. It's a Talmudic era midrash on the book of Genesis, on the book of Breshit. It covers most of the book, excluding genealogies and similar passages, with verse by verse and often word by word commentary. And it's written in Hebrew, mixed with Aramaic and occasional Greek words. So the great thing about these midrashic works is they sort of do a lot of big picture analysis, and they do, like, you know, they zoom in a bit and then they go down to even like what a word can mean, which just shows how much richness there is to a single pasuk. I mean, we just had a 10-minute conversation about this one pasuk, and we could have a 3-hour, 4-hour, we could write a book on this one pasuk, and it's been done. So, all right, so let's move forward to this next source. If I can get a volunteer who is comfortable speaking into a microphone to read it, that would be great. Let me just take this mic down if I can manage it. There's nobody on Zoom right now. Yeah. Well, it's going to be for the recording, so.
Lord said to Abram, go you from your land, from your birthplace, your father's house, to the land I will show you. Rabbi Yitzchak said, this is analogous to one who was passing from place to place and saw a building with a candle burning in it. He said, is it possible that this building has no one in charge of it? The owner of the building looked out at him and said, I am the owner of the building. So because Abraham, our patriarch, was saying, is it possible that this world is without someone in charge? The Holy One, blessed be God, looked at him and said to him, I am the owner of the world. The king will desire your beauty as he is your master. Show your beauty in the world and bow to him. That is the Lord said to Abram.
Right, great. I'm not so sure that mic is on, so I'm just going to read it one more time, and then we'll use this mic. Thank you for reading. You read beautifully. I'll just read it one more time for our listeners at home. So we just quoted our pasuk. The Lord said to Abraham, "Go you from your land, from your birthplace, and from your father's house to the land that I will show you." Rabbi Yitzchak said, "This is analogous to one who was passing from place to place and saw a building with a candle burning in it. And he said, 'Is it possible that this building has no one in charge of it?' The owner of the building looked out at him and said, 'I am the owner of the building.' So because Abraham, our patriarch, was saying, 'Is it possible that this world is without someone in charge?' The Holy Blessed One, be he, it's gendered translation, so I had worked on that, looked at him and said to him, 'I am the owner of the world. The king will desire your beauty as he is your master,'" so that's Psalms, "'to show your beauty in the world and bow to him," also Psalms. That is the Lord said to Abraham. So what do we think is going on here in this particular midrash, this particular moment? Abraham's walking around, he sees this building, he sees a candle inside of it burning, and he says, "Is it possible that this building has no one in charge of it?" What do you think he's thinking? What do we think the midrashist, which is the one who makes midrash, is trying to convey here? Getting head shakes? No?
Nobody lives there.
That nobody lives there. Okay. Great. Can you say more about that? Okay, sure. No, thank you. I feel like. Yeah, Bob, go ahead.
Well, it says the owner of the world has come and I desire your attributes, your beauty. Show your attributes and beauty to the world, bow to the Lord. So it's like being chosen. It's like you're being chosen. Abraham's been chosen.
That's a good point. So Bob has sort of honed in on the fact that Abraham or Avram in this moment Abraham in this moment has been chosen. He saw a building, he saw a candle inside of it, he saw something's happening. So if he asked who is the owner of this house, it must mean that there was nobody around, right? There's no one around, the house was empty, but yet there was a candle. He noticed that something was happening, right? Someone must have lit this candle. So what does it mean? What does it mean for Abraham Avinu to notice this? What does it mean to notice these sort of small things in the world? Yeah, Bobby.
That there is some capacity of divine presence, and he's kind of like he's on the trail, seeking it out. That's the way I'm interpreting it.
Right. No, I mean, I think look, there are no wrong answers. There are no wrong answers. Bobby's saying that he's noticing that there's something going on here, right? He's noticing that there's some divine force in the world, and he's on the path to discovering or maybe asking what that is. Yeah. Oh, great. Yeah. Yeah. That is a really beautiful connection. So we're saying that Abraham noticed there was an element of fire here, right? And Abraham noticed that it was happening, and I'm sure a lot of people, like you said, walked by it and didn't notice. It's interesting because it's a prelude to Moshe. This is, as the midrash like imagines the story, this would be a prelude to that moment. But no doubt it drew on that noticing a flame and turning aside, right? That's how it's often translated. And having like a curiosity, having a sort of just a wonder about it. Yeah, great. I feel like you're cooking up a thought.
Yes.
Yeah.
Get baked.
Yeah.
It is like partially baked.
Sure.
I would say it's this. I think we can interpret Abraham or Avram's statement as no way. There's no way that there's no owner of this building. There must be an owner of the building. Or how is it possible that nobody owns this? So I feel like he's demonstrating
Mm-hmm.
right? Like he could say, it could come from doubt or it could come from hope.
Mm. That's great. So he is almost incredulous at the idea that, like, there's no way that nobody could not, a lot of negatives in there, that no one owns this building, right? Um, I want to just cue in on a word here. In the Hebrew, it says Baal Habira, which means the owner of, actually means like castle. Bira is often translated as castle, and here it just translates as building. And I wonder what that means for us. How does that hit us a little bit differently? What's castle versus a building? You know someone owns the castle. Yeah, right. How could there be this castle and no one, and there's a candle, but there's no one around? Where's the owner of it? No one just leaves a castle unattended, right? Great, great.
Also, the status of someone occupying or living in a castle versus just anchored,
Right.
like something royal or comical.
Yeah, so the status of someone living in a castle, which is interesting to think of, who is that? Could be a queen, could be a king, could be a prince. And we have a lot of this, monarchical language, hamelech, right? The king in our liturgy. And we, Elul is not so far away in our rearview mirror, and we have this whole idea of the king being in the field. Now the king is, well, maybe there's a king in the castle. There's a candle there. There must be something going on. Which also makes me think the castle, I'm almost imagining like a high room, Like his feet aren't just on the path, his feet aren't just on the ground. We're thinking a lot about the path, which I love, which is beautiful. But I've looked at this midrash several times, and I've never really thought of him like necessarily raising his eyes to a high up building. I always imagine it at sort of floor level. But I wonder if there's an element of, not only is Avram or Abraham on this path, noticing the path in front of him and taking steps, but he's really taking in the whole world. It's not just about his journey, it's about the journey that's happening around him. And I think these past 2 weeks have been, there's a lot to express with no words to express them, to quote my friend and colleague Jared Scoff, another Ziegler student. But I think that, speaking for myself, and let me know if this resonates with you, that in moments where complete strangers have noticed that something's going on, have said a word of comfort, those moments have made a huge difference. Even on the way here, I was just low energy and like not sure if I was going to mess something up in the service or if I was going to grab the wrong Torah scroll, all these things we think about. And there was this guy out on the street, and I just sort of like waved at him, and he waved at me, and he very lovingly said, he's like, "No, I hope you're doing okay right now." I was like, "Thank you so much. Thank you so much for saying that." Just this complete stranger. And it's those moments where you feel like, I'm not by myself, right? There are people who are noticing, and I think that Avraham is noticing God, right? Is noticing the God in that building, just as in those moments we're noticing the divinity in one another, right? It's some of those little moments we never really know how it is we're going to make an impact in somebody's day or life, but those moments have the capacity to really shift our perspective, shift our experience in a really powerful way. And there are moments in each and every person's life in this room where you have shifted somebody's day, you have shifted somebody's week, you may have even shifted someone's life by noticing something that someone else wasn't noticing. And there's a holiness to that, right? There's a beauty to that. And sometimes it's so small, sometimes it's just a flame on a candle. But if we're taking our eyes off of our own path and we're looking around, we then may be able to see that flickering light and say, I wonder what's going on there. Maybe I should investigate that. Maybe I should say something. So let's move on to the next midrash here. And for the sake of not passing the mic around, I'm going to read it in English. Yeah, please.
In your translation,
Uh-huh.
you said of Rabbi Yitzchak open.
Yeah.
And then there's a verse from Psalms there.
Mm-hmm.
And I just happened to look in the Psalms itself.
Sure.
As to what it is. I'm going to just read the translation here.
Sure. Do you mind? Would you be okay with saying it to the mic? Okay.
It says there, take heed, lass, and note. Incline your ear, forget your people and your father's house.
Right.
And let the king be aroused by your beauty. That's actually the next sentence. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's really the connection here with Avram. God says this to Avram.
Mm-hmm.
So you had to find a way of making up the story. So it took a verse from Psalms.
Yeah.
In order to get into this mashal here.
Yeah. So thank you. We just investigated the sort of proof text that was brought here, roughly translated as "take heed, lass, incline your ear." Essentially, listen up and notice. Is that a fair?
Take heed, lass, and note.
And note.
Incline your ear.
Mm-hmm.
Forget your people.
Forget your people.
Same thing like
yeah.
Abraham, right? In your father's house.
And your father's house. There you go. That's a really good proof text. Good job, Midrash. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, Bob, and then we're gonna move on.
And show your best.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's your obligation. Do your best. Show your best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, show your best to God. I love that. That's great. Let's see. For the sake of, I think we've sort of touched the point in the second midrash I wanted to bring. So let's jump to Bereshit Rabbah. I have different page numbers than you, so it's the one that says 39:9 at the top here. So Rabbi Yochanan here asks a question. Rarely do we get answers. We get more questions than answers. And Rabbi Yochanan said, "Go you from your land, from your district, and from your birthplace. This means your neighborhood, and from your father's house. This means from your father's household." And then he asked the question, why did he not just reveal his destination to him? And then he answers himself and he says, it was to make it more endearing to him and to give him a reward for each and every stride. Now let's jump down to the next bolded part in the English. As Rav Huna said, in the name of Rabbi Eliezer, son of Rabbi Yosef HaGalili, the Holy One, blessed be he, withholds information at first and keeps the eyes of the righteous directed towards him. And only then does he reveal to them the particulars of the matter. So to the land that I will show you, upon one of the mountains that I will say to you, proclaim the proclamation that I speak to you. So he's quoting Yonah, a very interesting and doubtful character, right? And go out to the valley, and I will speak to you there. Yechezkel, also famous for his visions, right? And his sort of faith in those visions. So he's being asked to go on this journey, and Midrash is saying, like, because, well, that's, you want to know all the answers? Well, that's just not how God works. God doesn't work on your time, right? God works on God's time, whatever that means. Any reactions to that? Any reactions to that idea? Yeah, Paul.
It's treating knowledge as something that one has to be privileged to acquire.
Oh, interesting. Mm-hmm.
I work with technical experts a lot, and sometimes they're very opaque.
Mm-hmm.
I find that very frustrating. I'm annoyed with the person who didn't take the time to write it clearly.
Mm-hmm.
But because that's a very different idea that information must be clear.
Mm-hmm.
They're saying information is valuable, it cannot be given to anyone. You need the proper will, the proper attitude,
Mm-hmm.
certain amount of holiness.
That's great. So we're saying, Paul is saying, thank you, that this knowledge can't just be given to anybody, right? And sort of using the example of a textbook that just seems so dense. You're like, why couldn't this be written clear? It's like, well, you gotta earn it. You gotta go through it. Yeah, Irv, go ahead.
Yeah, back to my why God asked him to launch in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
My theory, the theory I read is it's spread from Judaism. That's what the whole point of them going. It wasn't just to go take a trip.
Mm-hmm.
Also, being an organizer, you never know what you're going to find.
Yeah.
I was trying to open up Toronto. I called one guy. Turns out he was a union leader. It happened to be from a union I never expected, and the response was never expected. It runs in like 5 minutes. I didn't know I'd get anything done. So what God is saying is don't be afraid. Go out there, tell people about myself being Jewish, and you'll see what the reaction is.
Yeah.
You can't tell them what the reaction is from people who believe in other gods.
Mm-hmm.
Like
yeah.
Bob nodding. We know it's a right thesis.
I love that. So if I could just pull a kernel out of that, saying like, just go out and try, go do something. You may not know how someone may react to you, and like that is kind of life, right? It's you kind of have to throw things against the wall until they stick. And I think that actually transitions us well to sort of the close to the conclusion of the shiur. And I want to take us back, or actually maybe forward, now that we're in the new year, to Purim, right? On Purim, we're called to make this olam hafuch, this upside down world, right? That's why we dress in the costumes. That's why a lot of shuls will just play with all kinds of nusach in their davening. It was really beautiful last year at the conservative yeshiva in Jerusalem. All of the rabbinical students and lishma students came together and just did every kind of nusach, and it just kept us on our toes and excited, and it really brought this like childlike excitement about what was coming next, which was really beautiful. But then there is sort of the flip side to the Olam Hafuch, right? Because in the story of Esther, it's very much that the Jewish future is at stake and in question. And that's how a lot of this present moment feels. And I just wanted to, if I have a couple excerpts from Megillah, from a second Megillah, which you can read afterward if you'd like, but I'd like to just take us down to our verse here from Esther in the bold, which gets quoted a lot, and I just want to read it now. I'll read it in the Hebrew first and then in the English. Umi yodea, im la'et kazot, higaret lemalchut. And who knows? Perhaps you have attained to a royal position for just this crisis. Here's another story of another biblical character, Esther, who is asked to do this almost impossible task, right? And doesn't know what the future holds, doesn't know what the outcome is, but she is an individual with a lot of power. And it said to her, like, maybe this is why this is happening. Maybe you're supposed to do something right now. And like, so I just want to conclude with saying that sometimes we're asked to do things, not knowing the outcome, but we've got to put one foot in front of the other, kind of like Irv is saying here. We have to take steps, because it's through speech, it's through movement, and it's through action that we can bring holiness, healing, and change into the world. But what this doesn't mean, I just want to be very clear, is that if the idea of there is a reason for everything as a theology, if that doesn't work for you, I'm not saying that we should take that on. I wouldn't want somebody to leave this space thinking like, well, the Rabbinic Intern Rav Nico said, like, there's a reason for all the bad things that happen in the world. I'm really not sure I believe that. I think that's beyond what I can, if speaking from my own personal theology, what I can know. And I think that's very central to both of these moments, right? It's like, it's actually beyond our knowing, So thinking of each and every step, as the Midrash saying, sort of like giving a reward to Abraham for what he was doing, I think that's what we need to continue to do, right? To continue to put one foot in front of the other, send one text, make one call, make one donation, write one letter to an IDF soldier, and step by step and action by action, we can spread this sort of holiness that movement has imbued us with from the very beginning of our story as a particular people, which we're moving into in Parshat Lech Lecha, to this sort of broad world that we're just moving out of from Parshat Noach, which, the truth is we're inhabiting both of those at the same time. So in this moment, I just want to say that I think that right now we're called to walk each other through this, right? To take breaks, to give energy when we have it, which is very important, and also identify when we don't have the energy to give, right? Because the world isn't on just one person's shoulders. It's a collective effort. It's a collective burden, really. And if we have that mind of the if we have that idea in mind of the collective, we can better bear this weight that we're all currently feeling right now, knowing that we're really in it together. So with that, I want to thank you all for coming together this afternoon